an honor to speak this morning on behalf of the teachers that are sitting in the galleries. As we all know, many of us have received a number of emails and various types of communication regarding Senate Bill 486. My esteemed colleague from Logan wanted this particular measure to come to the floor of the Senate. I think, Mr. President, under your leadership, we've been responsible in making sure that we consider deliberately, intently, measures that are put before us so that, first of all, we do as doctors do no harm. When we get to looking at this particular piece of legislation, very simply, Mr. President, all we have to do is pick up the legislation and the physical note that was attached to that particular bill and just read through it real briefly. Let me just read what this particular bill that has been proposed, raising gas tax in West Virginia on natural gas extraction industry, would have based on what the Revenue Department has said. The proposed bill would result in general revenue fund losses. Losses, not gains, losses. That impacts the public employees' insurance for every one of these teachers and school service personnel and public employees that are sitting in the galleries, Mr. President. Losses of $54.3 million. No small number. That's in 2019. Fiscal year 2020, $63.1 million in losses. In fiscal year 2021, $68.2 million in losses. Mr. President, they can't afford it. Neither can West Virginia afford it. The natural gas industry, right now, we tax at a rate of 5%. Mr. President, when we get to looking around at our neighboring states, they tax at 2.5 in Ohio. In Pennsylvania, they tax at 0. They do put a surcharge on it that amounts to about 2.9%. But let me tell you what the effect of what our 5% does on the industry, on the extraction industry. Let's go back to 2012. In 2012 to 2013, West Virginia's extraction growth was about 38%. We went from about 539 million cubic feet to 853. In 2013 to 2014, we grew at about 35%. We went to a little over 1 billion cubic feet. 2015, we fell off a little bit, 29%, to 290 million. In 2016, our growth rate, Mr. President, was only 7%. I will tell you, Mr. President, that I think by the time we get to July 1 of this year, we're probably going to see that growth rate probably pretty flat, if any at all. Why? Because when we get to looking at the revenue that's actually realized coming into the Department of Revenue right now, our natural gas revenue continues to decline. But let's compare to Ohio, who's at 2.5%. They started out in 2012 at about 86 million cubic feet as compared to our 539 million cubic feet. Right now, Mr. President, 2016, they're at 1.44 billion cubic feet being extracted annually. Last year, they grew at a rate of about 42%. The difference between what they did and what we did in this last year, they're about 4% over what we did. Now, if we go back to 2012, they were way under us. They were just getting their industry off the ground, just getting it started. But already they're beginning to overtake us on their production. If we look at Pennsylvania, Mr. President, they're harvesting gas out of the ground right now at a rate of 400% of what we in West Virginia are doing. Right now, we've got about $1 billion worth of pipe laying on the ground at various locations throughout West Virginia, Mr. President, because they want to harvest the gas out of the ground in West Virginia. We're going to do it at 5% rate, and they're willing to do that. But the measure that was put forward in Senate Bill 486 would have raised that rate to 7.5%. I have a prediction. If we had done that, that $1 billion of pipe would have disappeared out of West Virginia, and we would have been left with no gas being extracted out of West Virginia, which would have been a travesty. It would have been a tragedy on the revenue necessary for this state to be able to function. That's reckless. That's a reckless disregard had we passed that measure. Mr. President, we've done the responsible thing. We want the Atlantic Coast Pipeline and we want the Mountain Valley Pipeline to be constructed. The industry needs to know that we're going to be stable in the things that we do so that they have reliability in order to start generating that. When they do, and the extraction begins, even at the 5%, we're going to yield tremendous benefits for the various areas within West Virginia, but in addition, Mr. President, to the revenue necessary to support the operations so that we can continue to pay the public employees, the school teachers, and pay their public employees' insurance. It's going to take a few years. We've got to be patient. We can't be reckless. We've got to be responsible with a responsible budget that's put forward that recognizes all of the needs of West Virginia and provides a reliable, truthful measure forward that the people sitting in the gallery, Mr. President, will know that we've taken care of them. Thank you.